It's a very warm welcome today to the Global Sports Channel to Arwen Adams. Arwen, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you, and I'm very excited to be talking to you today because I'm taking up a subject that I've never spoken about before on the show, so I'm really, really excited. Before we get there though, let's tell everybody whereabouts in the world you are talking to us from today.
Well, I'm actually in Virginia.
Virginia in the United States. What a beautiful part of the world, and I'm sure you've got spectacular scenery during the summertime, is that right?
Yes.
Or have you been outside today enjoying the summer, or is it a lovely day?
Yeah, it's not too hot. It's been really hot this last week, but it was actually pretty pleasant today.
Okay, good. And how's the COVID situation been around your area where you are, particularly there in Virginia?
I'd say it's gotten better. We can actually go out and do stuff now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's really, really good. Now, we're all about sports on the show, and we're going to talk about a sports that we've never talked about on the show before, and that's mounted archery. What a fantastic sport. You've got to tell us all, how did you get involved in mounted archery? Where did it all start for you?
Well, actually, it kind of started in a tack store. I saw a brochure underneath the desk, and I picked it up and I showed my dad. And we found out that this lady, her name is Elizabeth Tennant, and she was doing a clinic near us, and I joined in, and I fell in love with the sport.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
So how long ago was that?
about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. And how old were you at that stage?
10.
10. Okay, fantastic. So
Yes.
you started it when you were quite young. Now, for everybody who's like me out there and didn't know a lot about mounted archery, can you explain to us exactly what it is? What's involved in doing mounted archery?
Well, you are riding a horse, of course, and so you're going down the track at a canter, which means the horse is running, and it is most of the time it's a 90-meter track, and the horse does it in about 11 to 13 seconds. And you shoot front shots, which means you're shooting to the front of you, and then side shots to the side of you, and then sometimes you even turn around backwards and shoot a back shot to a target that's behind you. Sometimes the targets could be on the ground or on the opposite side of the horse. Really depends.
Okay, so if I imagine that it's like a track that's been set out specifically for the course for you and the horse to go around and shoot at these targets.
Well, sometimes it's a straight 90-meter track, sometimes it's a longer track with a lot of turns, or sometimes it's a trail in the woods.
Oh, okay, so you can do cross country as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And what do you prefer? What discipline out of those ones that you just mentioned to me do you enjoy doing the most?
Well, I enjoy the cross country because, well, the scenery, it's beautiful. You're underneath the trees in the woods, and I enjoy the longer tracks and just cantering out in the woods.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you started 3 years ago. Did you have your own horse?
Yes, I did.
So that's a major step forward, I guess, because if you don't have a horse, it's pretty difficult to do the sport. So what's the name of
Yeah.
your horse?
His name is Prince.
Prince. And how old is Prince?
He is 8 now.
8 years old. Okay. So he's a little bit older. Oh, sorry, a little bit younger than you.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have to have any specific training for the horse to be able to do mounted archery?
Well, they have to be able to run in a straight line or be able to steer with your legs because you can't touch the reins when you're riding because you have a bow and arrow in your hand. So they have to be able to steer, and you just have to be able to use your legs. So it is a specific training,
Hmm.
and it can be difficult and it can be easy. It depends on the horse.
Yeah, right. Okay. So how long did it take you and Prince to get kind of in sync with each other to be able to do this? Was it weeks or months or even years to get used to being able to ride without hands?
Well, it probably took about a year, year and a half to get him to the point where he could basically do anything that I needed him to do.
Oh, right. That's really fascinating. So can someone else hop on Prince and he still understands the commands, or you only do it for you?
He will do it for anyone else.
Oh, okay. Brilliant. And tell us about the first competition that you went into. Can you remember it? Can you remember the first time you actually went out there in competition and shot some arrows?
I think it was a competition where you weren't actually running, it was walking and trotting. So basically for beginners. It was really fun. I mean, there's a lot of good horsemanship, good sportsmanship in this sport, and everyone's cheering on everyone, no matter who you're competing with.
I imagine so. And how does the scoring system work? Is it as simple as how many arrows you hit with the target? Is it like that, or do you get points for each target, or how does it work?
Well, the target score is 1 through 5. 5 is in the direct middle, 1 is on the very outside. And, well, you score through that based on how many targets, and then there's also speed bonuses for your horse. There are certain time limits for each course, and if your horse runs under that time, you can get bonus points for each second they run under.
Ah,
If they run over, you can get deductions from
yeah.
your score.
Okay. So what's the kind of highest score you can get on any typical track?
Well, it really depends on how many targets or how many arrows you're allowed to shoot per target.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how long does each competition last for? Do you do only one run, or do you get several runs through the course?
Well, for usually for the cross country courses, since they're longer, they're a little bit harder on the horse, so that's about 2 runs for those courses. But the courses that are the track courses, which is usually 90 meters, you usually get 6 runs.
6 runs. Okay, fantastic. So when you started off, did you join a club? Is that the best way? So if someone's out there listening today to you and they're inspired by your journey into mounted archery, how do they actually get started? Is it best to go and join a club?
Well, I did join a club. It was a couple months before I did, but I did join a club. Um, and actually now I have actually created my own club here in Virginia.
You've created your own club.
Yes.
Fantastic. You're 13 years old and you've got your own club. Okay, how many members are in your club at the moment?
Well, about 10 competitors. They started last October
Yep.
when Elizabeth Tennant, who is my trainer, came down here and did a clinic. And now we're competing all over the country as a team.
Okay, fantastic. So when you say all over the country, you go from coast to coast competing?
Well, I was in Michigan once. We are going to do Virginia Beach at the end of this month. We go to Tennessee, and it could be anywhere based on where the competition is, and we'll start going farther out as we start to get better and better. We'll start farther out.
Going further and further. That's great. So you get to see the country doing something that you're really passionate about doing. That's
Yeah.
that's really cool. So have you learnt much about the history of mounted archery? Where did it all start from? Do you know?
Well, not exactly like to the exact point, but I do know that um, mounted archery wasn't always on tracks. Usually it was on battlefields.
Right. Right. Okay. So it wasn't more a sport. It was more of a killing the enemy type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the history in the United States? Have you learnt from people that have been doing it for a long time? Like what's the typical age of someone in the club?
Well, right now in my club it's mostly youth, but we just started it last year. The club that I joined, it was actually mostly adults.
Okay.
There were very few youth.
Yeah. Right. And can someone participate in the sport by, say, hiring somebody's horse? Do you have to have your own horse to do the sport?
Well, usually you do have your own horse. It's a lot easier, but you can rent out a horse if the farm has like a ton of horses, or if someone is willing to share their horse with you, you can rent out another horse.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to us about the training side of it, because obviously, you're very dedicated and you've set up your own club, so you're out there doing a lot of training. What kinds of things do you do in training? Do you vary it up a lot?
Well, usually I will try to master a course before I change it, but lately we have been changing it up a lot so that I can stay on track with each course, but still be able to change and not like be stuck on one thing.
Right. Okay. So you're practicing a lot of new things as you go along.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And are there things that you want to do in the future that are difficult that you aren't able to do at the moment? Can you give us some examples of things that you'd like to improve on?
Well, I would. So right now I'm ranked 29th out of in the USA, which includes all ages. I would like
Wow.
to by the end of the year be ranked in the top 20 or maybe even the top 15. And actually, in a couple of years, we are planning to go to Mongolia and compete world.
Oh, so there's a world championships, is there, for mounted archery?
Yes.
Okay, and when is that going to be in Mongolia? What year is that?
Um, we haven't really scheduled what year we are going to be doing it yet, but we are going to be trying to do it in the next maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you're already in the top 30 in the world.
Yes.
Wow, that's an amazing achievement at the age of 13, and you're gunning to get into the top 15. So how much better in a can you quantify how much better you have to get into the top 15? Like what are your so-called weaknesses today that you have to improve on?
Well, I do have a little bit of a focus issue. Sometimes I focus more on my horse when I need to be focusing more on my shooting. And if I can start focusing more on my shooting, I probably can achieve that goal by the end of the year.
Okay, so if I imagine it for a minute, there's a lot of things going on at the same time. As you just mentioned, you've got the horse control and you've got the target set up and shooting time. So how well do you have to be, or how long before the target do you have to be prepared before you actually shoot the arrow? Like, is it something you have to have prepared quite a few seconds before, or is it a kind of a last minute thing that you do?
Well, it is. So it's a 90-meter track. You're running in 11 to 13 seconds, and I'm shooting about 4 or 5 arrows per that time. So you do have to focus on each shot and take your time, but and take your time meaning by like half a second,
Right.
like loading an arrow and all that.
So
So,
how do you load an arrow when you're riding? Like you have them on the back and you pull them over. Is that how you do it?
well, so there are several different types of ways you can pull an arrow. So there are quivers which hold your arrows. Either you can pull from your back, you could pull from your hip, or you could even pull from your stomach. But you can so it I used to do a lot of ground archery, so it helped me get quicker when I pulled the arrows from my quiver into the bow. And sometimes you can even pull the arrows from your hand. So you load them up against your bow and hold them on your hand, and you can pull them from the bow instead of from the quiver.
So what do you prefer to do? What's your preferred option?
Well, usually I like to pull from the hand because it is a lot quicker, but some courses actually require you to pull from the quiver.
Oh, okay. So they make it mandatory on how they want you to do it.
Hmm.
Okay, that's tremendous. So talk us about the equipment. First of all, how much is the equipment? How much is it today to buy a good quality bow? And I guess it's like anything. You can buy a budget one and you can buy a very expensive one, right?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. My bow was about $280.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
I don't know about the quiver. The quiver I got as a Christmas present. The arrows I'd say it ranges per arrow is about $6 to $12, depending on the arrow brand.
And how long do they last for? Are they things that you can reuse over and over again, or do they get damaged quickly?
Um, well, sometimes if I'm shooting an arrow at a target, sometimes I could splinter that arrow if I shoot it against another arrow, or if it hits metal on the target, or if it hits the ground and gets dirt buried in it. But if you keep if you hit the target a lot, or you keep from, well, hitting anything that could possibly break them, they can last quite a long time.
Mm. Okay, so it's not like you're replacing your arrows every time you go out for a competition.
Not usually. Usually I will keep a competition set of about 12 arrows that I don't use until competition day, and then I just use a practice set of arrows. But I'd say I get a new pack of 12 arrows quite often.
Okay, so imagine again you're flying around the track on Prince and you've got to take a shot of it at a target. How far away is the target from you and Prince?
Well, so at the track, the targets are usually in the middle of the track, or they're on the side on the track, placed in different positions. So there is one course called the Tower, and the targets are right in the middle of the course on one stand, and then they're actually up high. I'd say about maybe 4 or 5 feet off the ground,
Uh huh.
and so their front shot I'd take at the beginning of the track. I'd say that's a maybe 30-meter shot,
Okay.
and then
Hmm.
The second shot maybe about 15, 20 meters, and then the side shot would be about 10 meters away, and then the back shot really depends on where I am on the track.
So that's quite a distance to be shooting, 30 meters away.
Yeah.
So what type of shot do you like taking the most? Do you prefer the ones in front, side, or behind you?
Well, the side shot is the easiest, but I do actually prefer the back shot. It requires a little bit of skill to get up off the horse and turn your torso backwards without turning your legs as well. And I think the back shot's probably one of the funnest shots. And also the ground shot, which is a shot that is almost underneath your horse. So your bow has to go right beside your horse and you're shooting at the ground. So that's also a fun shot.
So when Prince started doing this, was the fact that you were shooting off these arrows from his back, was that spooking him out? Was he getting upset about that?
Well, his breed was created to be a really docile and gentle breed and not really be scared of anything. So, not really, but it depends on the breed you have. Like if you've got more of a excitable horse, they could be a little bit spooky at it in the beginning, but get used to it as they go on. Or you could have a horse that just won't have any future in it and won't really like it and is kind of too skittish.
Yeah.
Or you have a horse like my horse who just doesn't care.
Yeah, right. He just does what you tell him to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
What breed of horse is Prince?
He is a gypsy cob, so he is a draft horse, but he's a little bit smaller. I'd say he's in the 14, 15 hand high range. He's not super tall, but he's not short either. He's a really good horse. He's not the fastest horse in the world, but he will run the speed that I want him to go.
Does he get excited when you get ready to go out for a race day and competition? Does he know what's going on and he's looking forward to it?
Oh, he knows. I mean, he knows the difference between practice and competition. Practice, we don't usually have a whistle or there's not like a ton of people. The whistle is to guide you into the track or tell you when you can go into the track. So, I'd say that when he hears that whistle, he knows that it's competition time, so he gets excited. He gets a little he's dancing in his shoes almost. He knows.
Dancing in his shoes. That's fantastic. That's good. And how old are horses typically, or how old can Prince do this for? Can he do this for the rest of his life, or is there an age where he can't do this anymore?
Well, it depends on the horse. I mean, there are a couple of people out there that have horses in their late 20s doing this.
Wow.
And there are also people out there that have horses that are like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. I mean, it really depends on when the horse tells you they want to quit or if
Hmm.
the horse is like, I can keep going as long as you want me to.
Yeah, right. Okay. Let's talk about the following of mounted archery in the United States, and in particular where you are. When you do a competition, is there a lot of people that come and watch and spectate?
Well, usually during the competition, we did have a competition here, and I'd say there was about 20 people watching and about 10, 15 competitors. And then in Tennessee, there's quite a lot of people that come and watch. I mean, we done the World Grand Prix, which was hosted in Tennessee for 1 year. There was a lot of people there watching.
Hmm.
I don't even know how many I could count. I don't
Right.
think I took the time to count.
Yeah. And is it a sport that's becoming more and more popular?
I think so. I mean, when I started 3 years ago, there were very few youth in Eastern U.S. and now there's several, and actually most of which are in my club.
Right. Okay, that's cool. And what about your friends? What do they think of you getting into this particular sport? Because I guess there's the stereotype that you're either running track or playing basketball or baseball or something at school, but going out and doing mounted archery is a little bit different. So, what do you think? What do your friends think of all of this?
Well, I'd say actually 80% of my friends are in the sport themselves, but the other 20% of them think it's pretty cool and usually get quite a kick out of it when I send them pictures of the competition or tell them how I did.
Yeah, I bet. I bet they do. And do you have kind of and whether it's at your club or another club, but do you have open days where people can come and try the sport for the first time and have a go at it?
Well, clinic days. So if we we are hosting a clinic. Usually Elizabeth will come here. She will host a clinic here, and people can sign up and they can come learn how to shoot, learn how to ride and shoot off the horse. Um, if we are having a club practice, which is usually what we do, you can come and watch. You can shoot with us, but usually we they don't ride with us. If you do a clinic with Liz, you can join the club and you can start doing club practices with us. But usually we don't like let people just join in with us if they're not in a club. But you can come watch if you want to.
Right, okay. So tell us a little bit about this Elizabeth lady. She sounds like she's a horse whisperer a little bit. What's her background?
Well, she is the ranked number 5 mounted archer in the world, not in the country, and she is one of the best trainers. And she trained me for a couple years, and she actually took me on and personally trained me for an entire summer. And
Wow.
she's actually kind of how I started. She got me started in this.
So she's been a real mentor to you in this space.
Yes,
Yeah, brilliant.
she
That's
is the
great.
mentor.
And as far as going forward, do you need any other support in terms of looking after the horse, or do you do all of that yourself and maintain all that side of it?
There's actually a lot of people that support me. We've got a lot of supporters out there that help with donations and stuff. And then I have my dad, who actually is my coach. He coaches me every day.
Hmm.
And then my mother, she takes care of the house and she takes care of me, which is a big part. And yeah, they're the ones who pay for the barn, for the food, for everything that my horse has. So I'd say it's actually mostly them.
Okay, it's always important to have parent support, isn't it, and to recognise and acknowledge how all the hard work they do for you. So, is there an opportunity to make money in the sport? Is there a professional opportunity for you in the sport?
Well, there are such thing called jackpots, which are competitions that you get a certain sum of money for like first, third, and second place. And then there are, which is Clash of the Clans, which is teams actually compete against each other instead of one-on-one with each other. Certain teams will compete against another team, and if you are first, you can win a certain like cash sum for your club to go to your club.
Okay, and what kind of money is involved in that? How much can you potentially win?
Well, for Clash of the Clans, in last October, it was a $500 sum for the first prize for the team,
Okay,
and the jackpot, I'm not exactly sure. I have not been to one, but I have heard of them.
okay. So, has corporate America got on board yet with the sport of mounted archery and started sponsoring events across the country, or not yet?
Um, I wouldn't say fully, but I wouldn't say not at all either. I mean,
Okay.
there are a lot of sponsors out there and supporters. Yeah, I
A-
mean, kind of, a little bit.
And what about the demographics in the sport? You know, it's a big thing across the sporting world at the moment about equality in sport and making sure that women get as much of an opportunity as men. Is mounted archery a predominantly female sport, or is there a lot of men involved as well?
Well, right now our club is mostly girls, and I have seen mostly women, but I do know quite a lot of men and boys that do it as well.
Okay, good.
Being
And
yeah.
you're also aligned to a number of associations and a not for profit as well. Can you talk to us about some of those things?
Well, the association, so there's MA3, which is the Mounted Archery Association of the Americas. Our club is associated with them, but MA3 is associated with the IHA, which is the World Association. That's the International Horseback Archery Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And then our non for profit, that's Heart of Warrior Incorporation, so Heart of Warrior Inc. And we don't just do archery. We do mostly mounted archery. We do also do therapy and make a wish type stuff with our animals.
Oh, fantastic. So, how did all that get started? How did the foundation get started? Because I did read something about your grandfather that was quite an inspiration in your journey. Tell us about him.
Well, this happened before I was born, but he did get stage 4 stomach cancer. Um, he did go through remission, and he got to see me born. He got to get to know me for about 8 months, but then it came back and he passed away. So he did have a non for profit himself, and we just we got blessed by God with all these animals, and we started to realize that these animals are full of love and they've been helping us through all this stuff. And we started sharing that with other people. And then we did a make a wish with a young girl, and she wanted to be a fairy princess and meet a unicorn. So we dressed Prince up as a unicorn for her.
Fantastic. That's great. And was she a local girl from the local area?
Say that one more time.
Was she from the local area, that girl that you're just talking about?
Yes, we did live in Tennessee at the time. So
Right.
she is from Tennessee.
Okay. So you talked about having different animals that are part of this journey for the not-for-profit. What other animals are involved in that?
Quite a bit, actually. So we have two miniature donkeys, one of them, so two miniature donkeys that are a little bit older, and then we have one that had a baby, so he's about a yearling now. And we're training him to actually get certified so he can actually go to places and go to hospitals. And then we have Prince, and then we actually have got two giant Irish Wolfhound dogs. And
Right.
we have like, I don't know, 30 chickens, a rabbit, a sulcata tortoise, an iguana, and uh, who knows what we might have in the next year or two.
Well, that's a wonderful thing that you're doing with the foundation, and giving people an opportunity to be connected to animals, because they're such amazing healing mechanisms as well, aren't they? They really help people in a lot of different ways. Have you always had animals around you in your life?
Not always. I'd say the very first animal that we owned in my life was Prince, and then the dog, and the dogs came a little bit before that. But I wasn't really involved in the dogs too much because I loved horses so much. So they got me a horse. I was 9 years old. Prince was 4,
Yeah.
and I got him, and then we got the donkeys, and then all the animals just started adding up after that.
Okay, brilliant. Well, for everybody watching and listening to the show today, I'm going to put the links in the show notes to Arwen's not-for-profit organisation. So if you do want to check it out and get involved and maybe lend a hand somewhere, I'm sure that Arwen and her family would be very, very grateful for that. So I'll make sure I put that all in the show notes today, Arwen. Now, back to mounted archery. Tell us where you'd like to see yourself in the sport in the next, say, 5 years. What are your goals in the next 5 years with the sport?
Well, I would like to actually be up in the top 5. I want to become a professional trainer and start spreading the sport elsewhere and train more youth. And I'd say I really want to start competing not just in the USA, but actually in like internationally in like Mongolia and all the places that have it, and even France, where one of my friends lives, and she does it there too.
So are you part of an online group globally for the sport at the moment?
So MA3 is the group that we are associated with, that my club's associated with, and then they are associated with the global group, which is the IHAA.
Right, okay, good. And what about the Olympic Games? Is there a chance that mounted archery could become an Olympic sport sometime in the future?
If it keeps growing so rapidly like it is, then I sure hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we need people like you who are young and passionate about the sport to share it around the world and get more people involved. So you mentioned Mongolia a couple of times, and that's obviously a place you want to go along with France. Have you got other countries that you'd like to go to participate?
Well, Mongolia and France, and then I think Hungary are some of the bigger places that hold a lot of competitions, so mainly those places.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to ask you to come back on the show after you've been overseas to one of your events, and you can talk to us all about the travel experience if you'd like to do that. And if someone wants to get involved in the sport, as you said, they should get in touch with a club online in their nearest area if there's one available. And also, if we've got anybody listening today who wants to know a little bit more about the sport, can they reach out to you and ask some questions as well?
Yes, of course. I'd be glad to answer their questions.
Okay, that's absolutely wonderful. Well, listen, Arwen, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today. Thank you for talking to me about the wonderful sport of mounted archery. I wish you and Prince all the very best in the future and having lots of success together. And we look forward to having you back on the show one day and talking about your experiences with mounted archery.
I'd be glad to be back on here.
Well, you have a great day and enjoy the rest of the summer.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye. There we are. That was Arwen Adams talking to us from beautiful Virginia in the United States about mounted archery, a sport that I knew very little about. And there's a young girl at the 13 years of age, started when she was 10, and she's doing some amazing things in that sport. So check out in the show notes links to her activities. And if you want to get in touch with Arwen, she's happy to have a chat to you about the sport of mounted archery. Now, if you're here for the Global Sports Channel for the first time and you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. Helps us out a lot, and hit the little bell notification. You'll be notified every time we drop an interview onto our show. If you haven't checked us out on social media, please do so. Global Sports Channel. We're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Like us and follow us on there, and you'll be kept up to date with all of our content as it hits the airways. Well, that's it for me for this particular show. I'll be back again soon with another interview of an incredible person somewhere in the world talking about sport. Until then, stay safe and stay happy, everyone. Bye for now.